So the final item this afternoon, one of the goals of this symposium was to bring together, well, to bring the academic community into the AOM process. And I think we've kind of begun to achieve that. I think we need to figure out what we need to do to kind of improve that, and how we can, work closer with the academic community. So we decided to hold a panel session, which Jan from Netflix is going to host. So there'll be 1 minute of chair organization. And if we can ask our panel members to come up. Yeah, just here.
You got 5? Are you going to be standing here?
No.
You got yours? Just plug it in. Yeah, we can just plug. I should be able to just plug this in. The other side. Can you? Yeah. Oh, we can put it in there. There you go. All right. Camera about right. Thanks, Janice. Is that going to record there? Okay. Okay. Jan, over to you.
Projector. This projector.
That projector there.
I don't think we need them in.
Okay. So you're not going to project your slides then?
No,
Is that I don't actually know how you turn the projector off. So if anybody's got any ideas.
You pull the plug.
Yeah.
There are several plugs. So I don't have anything feeding it right now. Maybe.
If you put a screen, it's almost the same. Yeah.
Do that. That's not going to turn the whole thing off, though, is it? Yeah, I don't know how to do this.
Okay, now it's a lot better than before.
Oh, was it? What did I do?
No, it's just the right now. It's,
Yeah.
There you go. That's the easy way of doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Zoom in a little bit. No, I should. If you want to get it out of that.
I think that slides on one screen.
Try it.
Just plug it in again.
Yeah, if you plug it in. On. There, how's that?
Okay, that seems to work. All right, thank you all for staying until the very end. I'm very glad to see so many attendees. And actually, yeah, we just started organizing this a couple of months ago. We've been talking about it for a while, and as Adrian said, one of the initial goals was to bring together not only the community around the Alliance for Open Media, but also the academic and industry communities and bring them closer together. I think we succeeded in having a good mix of attendees, and definitely in the talks that we saw yesterday and today. But I feel like we can do even better. So yesterday and today, we saw the outcome of several collaborations between members of the Alliance for Open Media and academic groups. I feel like we can extend it a lot more. And part of this panel session is also to discuss some more potential and, well, avenues for research, but also how we can collaborate further. So I'd like to thank the panelists for joining today. So in alphabetical order, it's always hard to beat Anne. So we got Anne Aaron from Netflix, Yanis Katsavonidis from Facebook. We have Anil Kokaram from Trinity College Dublin, Patrick Lecale from the University of Nantes, and then Tsahi Weissman from Stanford University. I think we have a pretty good mix of industry and academia represented here. Also people that have, I think everyone has an academic background, but also people have been switching between both fields. Some have moved over to what we sometimes say the dark side, but some of them have moved back. First of all, we wanted to start with a quick warm-up round. I hope you prepared these ones because it's going to be pretty quick. Is there a microphone?
Should be on. You can go by direction. And you go by.
Oh, alphabetical. Last show I binge watched was So the last show I binge watched was The Politician. Have you seen it? Of course, on Netflix. I love high school shows. Plus, if I was not in video coding, I would probably be a politician. So favorite test sequence, of course, Foreman. You'll never forget your PhD test sequence. And your favorite video quality metric. Duh. I mean, that's rhetorical. You know what my answer is. Vima.
I'm next on the
Yeah,
alphabet. Okay. Last show you binge watch. I don't binge watch anything. I don't binge drink neither. Yeah, but I like wine. So it's not. And I'm a researcher, so I never think about last but next. So each time someone asks me what is my favorite wine, I'm used to say the next wine, the next one I'm gonna test. So I guess yes, the same for sure. The next one I'm gonna watch. Your favorite test sequence? Okay, I could have said crowd run because that was something very challenging that we have seen today. But this is one which is there now. You said Foreman. For me, it's mobile and calendar. It's unbelievable. It's the typical test sequence. You know, it's represent every. Okay, you want to make something challenging, but it's kind of do-it-yourself stuff as well. It's super weirdo. But by the way, I had the chance to discover. It's 5 years ago. I was in Orange in France, and there was a cupboard. I opened it. It was full of all the things that are actually in that sequence. The ball with white spot, the train, the tissue. You know, this thing. Oh my God! Ooh,
So Patrick, do you want to remind you that is the quick warm-up round?
Yeah, this one. And your favorite video quality metric? The next one we're gonna develop.
Let's see. Sorry, I didn't prepare. But the last show I binge watched was Our Boys on HBO. My favorite test sequence is, well, okay, now I'm going to reveal to you guys that sometimes I'm approached by all sorts of people who claim to have this new startup on compression, and they are defying fundamental limits, and they're doing all sorts of interesting things. And so I let them, I give them the binary representation of pi and see how well they compress it. So far, I haven't seen anyone do better than a coin flip. But now that you know what I give, has to be our little secret. My favorite video quality metric, I'm gonna slightly change the question into, let's talk about a compression metric. Is anyone familiar with the Weissman score? Well, that would be my choice.
Okay, last show I binge watched, guess that's The Good Place. Yeah, it's pretty good. Favorite test sequence, gotta be mobile and calendar. That's what I spent many years working on. And favorite video quality metric, yeah, for the really bad stuff and really good stuff is PSNR, and for all the in-between stuff is VMAF, yeah.
For me, it's Orange is the New Black. I like El Fuente because I think it has a lot of variety. And for professional content, VMAF, for UGC SIM.
All right. So yeah, it's blinding a bit, right?
It's always, it's always turning on by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apologies for that. I don't know if you can fix that. But in any case, I included these test sequences for nostalgic reasons. You didn't have to pick from these, but apparently they're still very popular. And by the way, the best way to be immortalized in this field is really to be part of one of these. And yeah, some people manage to. So I don't know if you recognize it. All right, and on to the more serious stuff. First question, and this is a question that comes up regularly, is video coding dead? And I added this copy of an article. I don't know if you recognize it. Some people that were here were also part of that discussion, asking, is video coding dead? Actually, it's from more than 10 years ago, 2006, in IEEE Signal Processing magazine. And back then the question came up and they believed we can do about 50% better than AVC. I believe that to be true. I'm a strong believer of that. But yeah, I mean, we've come a long way since then. The question, we can ask it ourselves again, are we nearing the limits of compression? And is it still as relevant as it used to be, for example, with 5G on the horizon? Anyone wants to
go? I'll go first. I have a strong opinion about it. I think we are not. We can talk later, I guess, how we're going to get there. I think 5G is not going to change the need for better compression. It's simply going to make the appetite higher for better quality. So it's like somebody who's hungry, you give more food, he's going to eat it. So I think the need to compress more is always going to be there. New use cases, especially 360 video, is going to make yet another expansion, like when it went from HD to UHD and now 8K. So no, and 5G is irrelevant.
All right.
According to Saki, from the La La Land of information theory, as he described it, we don't know, right? Because we don't even have achievability conditions for videos. So it's hard for us to tell, but my guess is we're not yet close based on the content that we see, based on some of the tests. So we don't know, but we're probably still far from it.
Anyone else who wants to go on this question?
So, well, I'll just continue agreeing with everybody. So we're not nearing limits of compression. I remember having discussions with people from Olivetti Research in Cambridge decades ago saying that, you know, we're going to have 10 megabits Ethernet. Why are we doing any video compression? Just send the data raw down the Ethernet, you know? But history is a teacher in this case, and the volume of data expands to occupy the available space. So even if we're nearing the limits of compression, we still always have to do more. So compression isn't dead even with 5G on the horizon.
Well, I strongly agree. No, last time that I thought this, I said no. No, yes, it's dead. And did this mistake more than 10 years ago because I was so frustrated with the decisions that were taken in AVC. I say, wow, it's dead for research because there is nothing really exciting, interesting in that. And actually, I was totally wrong. So I will never say, yeah, it's dead anymore. Yeah, oh la la, that's wow. That's smart. That's smart.
That's a fire hazard.
You see?
I think we need to get that down.
Yeah, humans.
Yeah.
But as Yannis said, the needs, you know, we are more than ever in a society of image, and the things that changed since I thought that video coding was dead is that actually nowadays everybody is a content producer, and that changed totally the landscape. Oh, it's burning now. Yeah.
If you put it on this one, it will be okay.
So we're gonna have this
Yeah, no, video coding is not dead, but we should focus.
You want to move a bit, yeah.
Voila.
Maybe
How is this gonna help?
maybe do two between this side.
Yeah.
Stay in the middle.
You two guys go this side, and three of you go here. Maybe that will work.
Separate ourselves even more. Okay.
Oh. So no, it's not dead. It's a little bit more, if you don't. What's that move? Can we go a little bit more
We
left?
can go a bit more,
I
yeah.
totally disagree with that new setup. Actually, it's more vibrant than ever. That's what I think.
So I'm going to agree with everyone in my capacity of as director of the Stanford Compression Forum. As I mentioned before, I'm often approached by all sorts of people representing all sorts of companies, and they want confirmation on what they're doing. And what I've learned is to be very suspicious of those who come, well, first, of course, those who say that they are defying and breaking Shannon's fundamental limits. But there are also those who say, listen, we're achieving the fundamental limits. And those two, I tend to be very suspicious of, because it usually means they are too in love with their models. And so I think that here, video, just like any other types of data compression, it's about being very proactive about finding new, more nuanced models. And I think in the context of video, we're nowhere near. So yes, there are all sorts of areas where things appear to be incremental, but I think if you guys and, in collaboration with some of us in academia, sort of try to be more proactive in talking with people from other fields, other disciplines, cognitive psychologists, neuroscientists. Think about how we perceive, how the brain, try to get inspiration, I think, from all sorts of people that we're not used to talking with in the context, say, of video compression. That can lead to significant progress.
All right, there seems to be a lot of consensus here. And assuming indeed that the answer was yes to, or that, well, actually that video coding is not dead, and we should continue. So what direction should we pursue beyond AV1? So should we target incremental improvements or look for more revolutionary solutions? And what kind of directions? I mean, we've seen a couple of directions today and yesterday. So where should we be heading?
Start this side.
Okay.
Well, for me, the answer is there will not be enough, because the complexity that, let's say, 20, 30, 40 new tools will bring in will not be tolerable, I believe. So that complexity wall requires us to rethink, rewire, and simplify. So I believe that revolutionary, if you want to call them, solutions are the ones that we need to seek. What areas? I can go on forever, but I think we only have a few minutes here. One of the key messages I got these 2 days is, I'm just going to highlight here, object-based coding. It was a common theme I noticed on the first day. When people are describing that there is a dog or there is a face, that's indirectly saying, if I partition my video into objects and code them separately in some different way, I'm going to do a much better job than treating pixels. So object-based coding, I have a belief that the entire transform quantization, inverse transform loop is old, was created for a whole different set of reasons 30 years ago, and we need to revisit it. But revolutionary, and go back to the basics. Better model your signal, what you're trying to compress, and find the fundamental properties, either statistical or information theoretic, will help us understand what are these directions.
Okay. I think there's always two threads going on here. One is a practical concern about complexity and speed, and the other one is limits and fundamental models, right? And this is sort of research and implementation trade-off. There is a good opportunity now with the success of physical-based models that we just saw. I mean, the ability of graphics to synthesize scenes that will fool us all means that we probably have a chance to model video as well as speech guys have been modeling speech for years. And that's been sort of holding back success in video coding as much as it has been successful in speech coding. So maybe there's a chance to go for that better modeling of video. But that's not going to make things easier to implement. So there's got to be some realization of that we have sort of reached that complexity issue right now with AV1 and AV2. So both things have to be looked at, and maybe that is the way in which the research community should approach these ideas or this problem.
So we've talked a lot about the technology side, and there's a lot of ideas in the room. For this specific question, I want to focus more on maybe the methodology, on what could be revolutionary, not necessarily the technology, but how we handle the problem, right? So this is an alliance. So in some way, the research community, both industry and academia, could be a bit more cooperative than what has been done in the past with respect to developing the standards, where you have different companies probably experimenting on the exact same thing, improving that, and you just have duplicate efforts across the different companies. So maybe better cooperation, considering it as an alliance and not really competitive. There's of course some competition. We all have our individual motivations, but we also have to look at the big picture of what we're trying to do, and that's reduce bandwidth, improve the lives of everyone in some way, right? So I think that's one thing that could be revolutionary in looking forward beyond AV1. And now we have a bigger group of people compared to the founding members of the Alliance for Open Media. So that's one thing of just being more cooperative. The second thing, just more practical or tactical, I guess. Beyond AV1 too, we were also a smaller group. We had Dala, we had Thor, we had VP10, yeah, and so we had a code base there, and we were also in a rush in some way, right? Because we wanted an alternative to AVC, and some folks were not using VP9. So here we have more time. So I think we can address more the technical debt that we encountered. A few companies had mentioned that, Mozilla and Intel, where let's really look at the different tools. Let's not make it too complex. Let's spend time doing that since we have time. Right? Do that. Look at the code base. Does it have to be this complicated code base? And that could also encourage more folks to join in, like academic, because there might be a high barrier to enter right now based on the code base. So I know there's a lot of other technical ideas around the room. So I want to focus on the methodology beyond AV1.
Of course, as a researcher, I will go for the second option, but I don't know if it's realistic. But from my point of view, we have. I'm still really frustrating that we don't have a perceptually or cognitively friendly representation for video coding or image coding, and there is a kind of mismatch that the same applies for image quality. If you want to have, for instance, image quality assessment, which is based on a human visual system from bottom-up point of view, you will have to operate in a perceptual representation space, which totally mismatch with video coding current representation space. So it's difficult to match the two. So my hope is to seek for things like that. I totally agree with what has been said before in terms of a multidisciplinary, but I would say more interdisciplinary approach. This is more or less, I based all my career on interdisciplinary approach, and better understand how we how humans interpret image is probably the way to go. Having said that, it's not that simple, and I'm not sure actually that this should be based on only one representation space. I'm not sure that from a psychology point of view, the representation that is required to have a good scene understanding is the same that the representation which is required to have hedonic or aesthetic feeling. So most of all the work that has been done in video coding or image coding are based on representations that can be scalable or not, but they are still more or less the same. This is the same representation. And I'm not sure it fits the target here, especially when we target different range of quality. So probably we need something closer to what computer vision people are doing for representation to when it comes to scene understanding. This is maybe the object-based coding that Yanis was referring to. But then when we are seeking high-end quality, then we have to touch something else. What makes things beautiful? What makes things good in a hedonic sense? So, and maybe it's another representation that we need then.
Okay.
So I'll agree with all my colleagues and slightly expand on this point. I think that, let's say I have a colleague who's helping the blind see. He's a neuroscientist, and he's creating an artificial retina. And he's saying that by any sort of quantitative measure that you can sort of information theoretically quantify the number of bits that the human eye can take in per unit time. And that's a minuscule amount. It's like order of, by the current models, it's in the order of kilobytes per second. So in principle, if we're proactive enough about understanding this system, we shouldn't have to send more than that many bits per second for our video compression for human consumption. Another case in point is a colleague of mine from Berkeley. Some may have heard of his research, Jack Gallant, another neuroscientist who can basically look at MRI, an MRI movie of neural activity, very coarse neural activity, and from that get a pretty good reconstruction of a video that is presented to a human observer. So I think all these sort of my interactions with these kind of neuroscientists make me believe that, number one, by talking with them and having a better understanding of the neural nets, and not the deep neural nets, but the biological neural nets, I think that there's a lot of potential for doing substantially better, like orders of magnitude better than where we're currently at.
Right. So it looks like we're indeed looking for more revolutionary solutions, and here more modeling, perceptual impact, more collaboration, and a lot of interdisciplinary research as well. So I think that does open up a lot of avenues for collaboration with academic groups. And then the question is, how do we get them involved? We were able to attract some academic groups, quite a few here, but we should be trying to involve more in video coding research, in that cross-collaborative field around video coding research, but then also around the Alliance for Open Media. So how can we get them involved?
Maybe, am I the only academician here on this panel, or? Oh, academic. Okay, yeah. Okay, great. Sorry. Okay, yes.
Two, and I count as half. So.
Okay, so what do you want first, an academic or an industry person?
Doesn't matter.
Go ahead. You have the mic.
So, I mean, I'll say the bottom line, unfortunately, in academia is funding, money. Yeah, and for me, the kind of funding that I typically get, and that most people in academia get most of our money from, is NSF and governmental agencies, and they tend to encourage more sort of theoretical research. So I don't I don't think it's realistic for me to, let's say, write a grant to NSF that would support like, hardcore video compression.
We had one for distributed video coding.
Ah.
NSF.
With who?
With NSF, with Burnt Road.
With Burn? Okay, when was that?
2000.
2000. Okay, so times have changed. I can tell you.
Long time ago.
Yeah, and also sometimes there's some industry funding, but again, from my experience, it's been usually again we were usually encouraged to do things that are more sort of interesting, original, theoretical. It was usually more like, okay, we're the practitioners will worry about just plowing ahead on video compression. But on the other hand, if I did have a source for substantial funding, like to dedicate a student for a couple of years to do something, toward a truly new approach to video coding, that would be, I think, very, very significant. But again, it has to be, for today, a student costs me order of 100K per year. So if I want to dedicate just one student to video compression, let them, get into it and then work on it in earnest, not just as some labor for hire for a few months, but do something significant, then we're talking at, in the very least, order of, say, 200K per student.
And since I was assuming that funding is indeed a bottleneck here, I think we can combine this with this question. I added some logos of funding agencies here. Whoever can name all 4 of them without looking them up, I'll buy them a beer. But yeah, want to pass this on? Who else wants to go? Patrick? You wanna... Okay.
I don't see Europe.
Oh, yeah.
What is this?
ERC is there.
ERC, yes, that's ERC. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And what was the previous question?
I can go back.
No, okay,
So how can we get more academic groups involved?
Okay. No, the thing is that maybe I have a different vision on that. Especially the thing that I really appreciate in AOM these last 2 days is the fact that it's a very interesting mix between practitioner, people who put really video coding into practice and with a lot of expertise there, and researcher. So that's and with I should say a kind of open mindset. And that's very interesting. And I'm not sure that other venue involved in, let's say, making product for video coding are such have such feelings. So this is one key. I think if you go for beyond everyone, try to maintain that spirit, open-mindedness, not necessarily going too far in blue sky things. And of course, it's important to hear the voice from other discipline, but still getting the feet on the ground and trying to develop things and getting the best of what is currently working well in the research academy. But remain open. And I think that with that, you may attract a lot of researchers who still wants to do research and not necessarily fine-tuning some algorithm, and who want to impact also the society. And that's what AOM can offer, that we can put these ideas in products in a fairly reasonable amount of time. The funding mechanisms that we have on hand so far, they are, let's say, kind of sufficient to do some kind of research activity, but they are not sufficient to put that into products. They are often focused on one group one individual. You pick ERC among all the European tools. ERC are typically the one that goes to one individual. And I think that what is interesting is to work collectively. That was the strength of AOM with all the founders, that the thing, and you were acting very fast, 30 months, to develop something, grabbing the force of everyone. The same should apply when you want to grab more people from academy to keep this feeling of sharing things together, not necessarily in a competitive manner, a competition manner, but sharing ideas and developing. So you could have picked another scheme from Europe, which is ITN, Training Network, where we train 15 PhD students all together on one topic. So I think that's very good.
I agree, and I believe the training networks are indeed a good example of how collaboration.
I could say more few words about that, but one thing I want to say, we can also have good funding through private sector, and we thanks Facebook, thanks Netflix, we do a lot of things together. But this type of funding are not filling, according to me, the timeline. AOM did amazing job in very short period of time, which means 30 months. When industry engage with academia, is rather is often for a duration of less than 1 year at max. Okay. You see, so there is something that has to be filled.
And you want to add something, or shall I pass maybe quickly?
So yeah, quickly, AOMedia could take the opportunity to expose itself more to the research community through workshops and international conferences. The next thing is the ITN model is a good model for engaging with researchers. You need to definitely expand the timeline over which funding is available for PhD students. It's 3 years, not 1 year. Also, universities, on the other hand, have to have a more grown-up attitude towards IP and the value of IP, because a lot of times there's blockage on both sides, right? And universities start to see too much about what is possible, and that's a hard gate to crash.
And go ahead.
So one thing I've heard from a lot of folks from academia, for example, is how will we compete with the companies that are doing research and video coding? We don't have enough of the compute power. We don't have the content. Okay, you were saying. So I think that's one
exactly
way that
point.
we can contribute is actually have some open compute network, or like at Netflix, we can't really give away our content. But we did produce content that we could share that's similar, like El Fuente, that's something we could all do, lower the barrier.
I really want to echo your. I've heard more people saying, I don't want money. Can you please make this many videos available for me to test, or so much compute resource so I don't need to wait 1 month to get the results? So we don't always need to put money. If we make a platform where people cannot see the videos, but they can run against the benchmark, is a great contribution. If we can make available, I don't know, 100 servers, running encodes all the time, this is equivalent to money, but it's something that is an overhead for a university to do. So I think money always talks. So money is the number one, but I would put content and compute resources very high up.
That's true. And the time that we can just encode with a single server somewhere and get groundbreaking results, I think that the time is probably over. There was one question around sharing best experience in collaborating between industry and academia. If someone wants to take this very briefly, if they have good examples.
Aside from, VMAF was because of collaboration with academia. The second best experience is that if you get to hire from those groups. So good experience with UT Austin, Christos, and Bristol, Mariana. So because we collaborated with them.
What else?
I can just, even though it's been like a year for Facebook to be involved with both the University of Nantes and UT Austin, our collaboration is very positive. So I can say that both the spirit and the preliminary results are very encouraging. So I could say these are our best experiences.
And of course, in YouTube and Google, AOMedia has a lot of examples of collaboration, which has led to development of audio metrics as well as new transforms with collaboration with Ken Rose and Antonio Ortega and so on, and that's ongoing.
Okay, I'll just quickly say that currently we have fun collaboration with a group at Facebook doing VR, and it's closely related to video compression, but it seems to be fun. And they gave us a substantial amount of funding to be able to dedicate a student to this. So I think that's a good case in point.
All right. So these were questions around encouraging collaboration. There's one more question which is slightly different, and which is about encouraging more diversity in the field. And yeah, so this symposium seems to be quite gender imbalanced, and I do have proof. I took a picture of the room. I think around 10% maybe, 10, 15. You counted 9, okay. Around 100 people. So less than 10%. How can we encourage more diversity? Any suggestions?
I think Anne should start.
Oh, don't get me started. I think there's so many meetings I go to that I go inside and I realize there are more Davids in the room, people named David, than women in the room, or Matts or Chris. I'm not saying and, it's like or actually. No offense to like Matt Ross here, but yeah. So yeah, it is definitely a problem. I think the first thing is that we just have to realize that we're actually all part of the problem, even myself. And so we should be part of the solution too. And, that goes all the way from like just very explicit sexist comments, right? Specifically, this is for gender. And that's another thing about maybe other types of minorities, but just specifically, so that at the extreme, like I went to like standardization meetings where in just one meeting heard men saying sexist comments, and we just accept it. Like and also the men around the room accept it. And I think the first solution is just to call it out, right? Not be afraid to call it out. That same trip I did, I've talked about it, going to a conference, going to a trade show and like demoing the best encoding with AV1. And the comment I get inside the room is someone asked me, are you demoing porn? And only because I'm a woman, and not probably don't ask that to other men in the room. So just that, and none of the men around commented. So I think that's the first thing. I think calling it out for everyone. There's also like more subtle things that happen that we could also like also introspect, like even for myself, how we mentor women in the field, not telling women, speak out more. That means like act more like a man, or act more, be more aggressive. It's more like maybe we should tell other men, don't be as aggressive, right? Not be like that, or be more confident. Maybe we should tell other people, be less confident, because So I think it's just this culture, and that's something I introspect myself. Just coming into a room, and I've experienced many times that when like Giannis, when we were working together, he would tell people, oh yeah, and leads the team, and I would see the surprised looks on people's faces. So don't give surprise looks. And then the last thing, so the problem, like being a minority, it's not my problem to solve. I think that's, one day I went to my manager, then David Ronca, and it's like, why do I have to give all these talks for women in tech? Like, aside from my real job, I have to do all these other things. I have to organize things. So I think it should be the task of everyone in the room.
And if I may jump, I couldn't agree anymore. I was not present, but I know the incident you mentioned, and we have to take the blame. At the end of the day, it's the people who are next to women to protect and make sure that this is happening. So unless you all take it seriously, and I will say the very simple thing that has been mentioned before, and people, we really cannot use Lina anymore as a symbol of image processing, all right? Let's be clear about it. It's offensive to the women in this field. So unless we all accept it, understanding for what it is, break ties with the past, if you want to call it like that, we're just going to recycle the same thing. We have to cut clean and move on.
I did see someone.
I have
Quick.
a strong point on this. I totally agree with everything. And I was doing sort of advocating against the Lena image. I've been aware of that. And I was very disappointed to see that it was taken down from the weekend. And that when I talk about it in conference, people counterattack and say you're fear-mongering, you're training debate. That was very disappointing.
You should be proud, fundamentally, if you ask me. And I come from USC where Lena was digitized, right? But I'm not proud of that part of USC's history, right? Let's be clear about it. There is something that has happened, and we cannot change it. What we can change is what's going to happen in the future.
So I can tell you that I know it's no consolation, but you're in good company. For example, academia, engineering at large, specifically Stanford engineering, electrical engineering at Stanford. The percentages are similar, maybe even more pathetic. But I can tell you that even within the School of Engineering at Stanford, there's diversity, pun not intended, of approaches across different departments. So we have had a few years of sort of looking at different approaches and what they yield. We've had one department that just decided that diversity is strategic and it's a goal that they need to achieve. And as such, they had sometimes explicit targeted searches for, let's say, a certain position, but also it has to be a woman. And there was a recognition that this was strategic, and people agreed. There was buy-in that this is important, and it didn't reflect. It wasn't like, oh, we took this person because she's a woman, but simply because we need to improve this department. And this was not something that my department did. It was a different department, but through this sort of a very aggressive policy that sort of prioritizes and shows very blatantly how committed they are to this, they have very significantly increased the representation of women and minorities over the past, they've been doing this for like almost a decade, and now they are, looking back, they've been extremely effective in achieving this increased representation. And in addition, what it did was just make them overall a much stronger department in all the usual very sort of single-minded quantitative metrics. They've become one of the leading departments in their areas worldwide. So I think it's just a matter of, unfortunately, it's not something I can say for my department, but it's what has been working for different department. And now that we have discussions about whether and how to adopt a policy which is similar. And I think, so, you guys too, you need to think about how important you think this is, how proactive you are willing to be. And maybe I can also relate it to diversity more generally, that potentially if you open yourselves up to, okay, what does it mean to do, say, video compression? Okay, this community of video compression, I guess it taps into the previous points. Video compression can be way more than just doing, predictive coding on vector, on, motion vectors and so on. It can be much more centrally about the human element and human perception, as we discussed, the cognitive psychologists and the neuroscientists and the artists, and all these people could be made to recognize that this area has something interesting for them. And I think once you're proactive about communicating that message, you'll be able to cast a much wider net, which again, in turn, will probably yield and bring closer all these revolutions and breakthroughs that you're hoping for in this field. So it'll be win-win-win.
All right, thanks. Since we're running already a lot over time, I'd like to move on to the last question or set of questions, which is around the symposium itself. We started organizing just a couple of months ago, so just to encourage this collaboration. So we heard quite a few suggestions on how to improve, and I feel like we can indeed do even better. So I want to open up the floor to anyone to make suggestions here, not only the panelists, but also people in the audience on, first of all, what can we do better? Where should we organize the next symposium? How often should it be organized? And any other feedback?
I just want to plug in actually, because I'm sitting next to Adrian. So I knew that he put a lot of hard work into this. So before you guys doing any suggestion, I encourage everyone to give him a big round of applause. Personally, I feel, yeah. Yes, thank you all of you. The other thing I want to mention that, this event, we have a lot of, actually, because this is hosted at Google, I think we have lots of people from Google, from different teams, not just people from my team, but people from YouTube, from other part of the team, has helped volunteer to get people in, volunteered a lot of things. I think this event wouldn't happen, or wouldn't do as well without their help. I just want to make sure that we thank them as well. Last is my suggestion. Anyone think that anything can improve, next time join them to organize this.
Just do it.
So you asked about suggestions. I mean, this is AOMedia. It's not about video. So I think if you're going to do a future research symposium, it should be about more things that AOMedia is planning to do. Another thing, it's great to interface with academia, but they're also industry. For example, studios, cinema. Okay, people that we should probably invite just to provide us with their own insights and their own, let's say, expectations about the future. What does the industry, beyond our own industry needs? Okay, and if we can, let's say, meet the requirements, because we really need to listen to people who are going to use or need our technologies, not just what we can do in general. So I think we should open it up, not just to AOM members, but to the people who really need our stuff. So just my own thinking.
Yeah. Hi there. I'm Eric. I'm from ARM Research, and I have a couple comments. I'm not really from this industry, so this is about my second OEM media meeting, but I have a couple observations. The first one is it's very clear this is an industry in transition, and the movement from royalty-based codecs to royalty-free codecs is going on, and it's important that this group comes together as an alliance and figures out how you're going to fund research, because AV1, from my view, was a fluke, right? If you could do AV2 like you did AV1, we wouldn't be here, right? You'd have something on the shelf and we'd go run with it. So I think the sustainable business question is, are the companies who benefit greatly from these new codecs going to come together in an alliance and find a way to fund the fundamental research that's needed to keep this going? And if they don't, royalty-free codecs will not work. And you'll get a tragedy of the commons kind of situation. And so I think now's the time for the member companies, especially the ones that have business reasons, to make sure we get this right. The second comment is I'm from the semiconductor field, and we do collaborative research all the time. So Intel and ARM and a bunch of other companies, in conjunction with DARPA, National Science Foundation, do pre-competitive research. We all get together, write RFPs, pick what it is. The government chips in money because the company says it's important. So if we look at the problems faced by this industry coming with important problems is critical. And the second part is having academics who want to stand up and work on it. And I see the ingredients for both of those. So there are my thoughts.
Can I add my own? Are we picking more? I think that this is a great start. I really need to congratulate both, mainly the organizers for doing this. What can we do better? Make it fixed cadence so that people can put it on the calendar ahead of time. Have a, let's say, better freezing of the participants so people can screen and go through the program earlier is one, I think, easy thing to do. Where I think it needs to go around in different places because otherwise it gets boring. It has to be a good place. How often? I think once a year is a good cadence, if you ask me. There can be intermediate ad hoc meetings, but I think the symposium should be one. Other suggestions? I think that including more countries to be part of the AOM initiative is of critical importance for the success of the initiative. It started with North American companies only, and later on gotten more and more traction. So I believe we need to increase diversity geopolitically if we really look at the end game here. So unless we realize that technology is just one of the aspects for the success of an initiative, we're going to be short-sighted.
Okay, we're unless I don't see any other hands, and it's 6 p.m. I feel like in any case there will be follow-up to this. I hope this will be a start of indeed more research symposia. And Adrian, I think I'm going to leave the last word to
very
you.
briefly. I know everybody is keen to get home, but I'd really like to thank everybody for coming to this event. And I just reinforce what Eric and everybody else said. I think this really is an opportunity for us to get together, academia and industry, and really solve some of these problems. And as Eric said, I think getting the people that really benefit from these technologies to pay for it is a must, really. So we're kind of currently investigating what we can do in that respect. But any ideas, I think, would be richly received, and please don't hesitate to bring them forth. The other thing I'd like to say is just about there are a whole load of people that I need to thank for the whole event. I'm going to keep it brief, and I'm sure I'm going to miss people out, but here we go. So first of all, I'd like to thank the panel here because I think they did a great job in spite of the difficult conditions. I'd like to thank Jan. He did a fantastic job helping to put the program together and reach out to academia, bring a lot of his contacts in. Anne as well did the same thing. So everybody, there were a lot of people that helped put this whole event together. Who have we got? FOMS as well, the FOMS guys. Thank you very much for coming. And hopefully we can kind of reach out to you guys and figure out how else we can work together. There are other groups as well, which I think we'd really like to hear from. Let's try and broaden our base in terms of academic groups, industrial groups, etc., etc. I'd really like to thank Netflix for organizing and funding the event last night, which I think was pretty good. I'd like to thank the Google volunteers. They kind of helped you guys up in the elevators, etc., etc. They managed to get here at ridiculously early hours of the morning, given that they probably had an hour and a half's travel to get up here and probably an hour and a half to get back home right now. So I'm going to wrap up. I'd like to thank all the presenters. I think the talks were very stimulating. They covered a huge area. And I think one of the things we have to do with this event is try and figure out exactly what the event is. Is it a research symposium? Is it an implementers forum? Is it a combination of those things? And to Yanis's point, if we have it on a regular cadence every year, should there be other events through the year which try and cover different areas so that we really try and approach it from lots of different angles? So I think that's something we're going to be investigating in the near future. And lastly, but not least, I'd like to thank everybody here for coming, making the effort. It was a really good turnout. Everybody that registered turned up, which for a free event, I think is pretty darn good. So on that note, I think I'm going to wrap up. Thank everybody. If I've forgotten anybody, then I'm sorry, and I thank you.
You did forget. You.
Oh, well, yeah. Thank you very much. Anyway.